Don't say it. Don't you dare talk about my hair right now. It is at night, the kids are at bed, and this is a sewing lesson. That's all that matters. So let's get started. For this lesson, you're going to learn 2 ways to hem your pants or skirt. I'm going to be honest, y'all, I spent about 10-15 minutes just now reviewing. To be honest, a lot of the stitches that I do, especially by hand, I don't know the names. I just be figuring out stuff. I'm going to be using this book as a reference. Check out my caption to get the details. Y'all, clearly, I need a new one. Your inch starts from the silver top. You're going to take your measuring tape and you're going to go from your waist. Okay. So this is my waist right here. You can get somebody to help you because you're not going to see those numbers, and you do not want to bend because then your measurements are going to be off. Y'all, my student did this the other day and I was like, yo, why did I never think about this? So she dropped her measuring tape upside down like this, kind of touched where she wanted it to go, and then read the number up here. I never thought of that. All right, this says 42 inches. I'm going to add 1.5 inch to 2 inches to that because I need a seam allowance. A seam allowance is basically, I like to consider it room for error. A little wiggle room to make sure I am not cutting too close to where I want it to be. I'm going to use this sleeve as an example of a hem. The first things first, you're going to want to iron the hem out first, like this. You're going to turn your project inside out. As you can see, here is the seam from the inside, and you're going to make a fold. Then you're going to make another fold like this. This is called a double fold hem because you are folding it twice. This is also where I'm talking about your seam allowance. By the time you do these 2 folds, the length should be exactly where you need it to be. Now that you've done this, we're going to iron this down. All right, this is nicely ironed. Let's go to the sewing table. Tie the bottom of your thread, and if you need to learn how to thread your needle and tie a knot, you can check out the last video I made. This first stitch is called the blind hem. We're taking our needle and placing it through the back of that fold. Your knot will stop your thread from moving any further. The next step is grabbing a few threads from the top part of that fabric. You're gonna, about 1 or 2 threads, so it's a small stitch. Then take the needle and go through like a tunnel in the folds. And I'm going to do it again, but I do want to point out when I'm moving on to another stitch, I use my thumbnail as a guide. So I'm not going too far and I'm not going too short. All right, let's do the stitch again. I'm going to grab a few pieces from the top of the fabric, and then I'm going to go through like a tunnel into the fold, and you're going to repeat those steps until you get to the end. I'm going to continue to do a few more stitches here. One thing I want to point out is when I'm going through this tunnel or the fold, I am not going through the back of that fabric. Let's end the stitch. I'm teaching you how I've learned, but remember there's multiple ways to skin a cat. Once the stitch is secure, that is really all that matters. So I'm going to pick up a few stitches from the top, and then I'm going to put it through the folds. I'm doing it, breaking it down into 2 steps, but you can do it all as 1 step. Now I'm pushing it through the fold, and I'm going to bring back that needle and go through that loop, and I'm going to do that step 1 more time. Now that I've tied the knots that way, here's my extra security. I cut the tail 2 inches away from that initial knot, and then I tie these strings like I'm tying my shoelaces. I just like to make sure that my knot is not going to go anywhere. I trim off that excess, and that is it. Let's check out the front. So this would be what people would see, but if my thread was matching the fabric, it would be seamless. It would look professional. So remember, buy thread that matches the fabric that you're working with. Onto the whip stitch. I find this stitch to be easier, but try it out and see which one works better for you. Like the first stitch, you're going to start off by piercing your needle through that fold and hiding your knot behind that fold. Then we are going to grab a few pieces of thread. Sounds familiar, but it's going to switch up in just a moment. From there, you're going to go into the fold, into the back of the fold instead of through the fold. This stitch creates diagonal stitches. That's your first diagonal. Now we're going to continue by taking our needle and piercing it through that fold and pulling. When you're moving on to your next stitch, remember, use your thumbnail as a reference. Again, we're going to grab a few threads from the top of the fabric, and then we're going to go through the back of the fold. I'm going to do this as one whole step. This is how your needle should look. Now pull your needle through and continue with that step. Here is your second stitch. My thread and my fabric once again does not match, but it is just so you can see the actual stitch. Again, you would want thread to match this fabric. We're going to go ahead and continue the steps until you get to the end. To end the stitch, I grab a little bit from the top and the fold and I pull through that loop. I'm going to do it one more time to see if you can catch how I did that loop. I'm putting the loop around the needle and pulling. Y'all, my thread be doing its own thing. Now I'm going to clip about 2 inches away from the original knot and I'm going to double knot it like I'm tying my shoes. I like security to make sure nothing's going anywhere. Cut off the excess. Now let's see how it looks in the front. Your stitches should look like this, diagonals, and look at those tiny little stitches. All right, now it's your turn to try. See you at the next video.